Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege, as it is every single day, to have you guys joining me here as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and some TV and a few other things now and again. And it's great having you guys along for the ride, because the only thing better than that stuff is having other fellow fans to talk about it with. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but that's part of the fun of it. Now, here's how today's show is going to go. I have picked out 5 topics from emails that you guys have sent in to me. How do you get an email, topic, or a question on the John Campea Show? It's simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john@thejohncampeashow.com. And this is important, guy. Make sure you put the word topic in the subject line. Put the word topic in the subject line, or else I won't see it. And of course, as always, keep those emails to 90 words or less. Now, after we're done the first half of the show with all of your emails, we're going to go to your live questions. How to get a live question on, use the super chat. If there's still time at the end of the show, we will also go to Twitter. We haven't had time to go to Twitter lately, but if we do, that's what we will do. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started with this. So, last night, me and Ann and Ray and our buddy Ryan, we went to go see Star Wars The Last Jedi again. So we went to go see it at the AMC Burbank 16. And end of the film, it was crazy. The film ends, the entire theater erupts in this huge cheering standing ovation. It was amazing. So everybody's having a really good time and all that kind of stuff. Everybody's having fun and hooping and hollering, and some people, you know, are in their costumes, and everybody's having a good time. So we leave. Now, we were at an early screening. We leave, and about 15 minutes after we leave, we're home, and we're on Twitter, and we're seeing police called to AMC Burbank 16, which is the theater we were at, was the AMC Burbank 16. And then all of a sudden, the Hollywood Reporter and some other outlets are starting to write about this near riot that nearly broke out at the theater. It's like, oh my God, we were just there like 20 minutes ago. What happened? So here's what it turned out. Apparently, at one of the later screenings, there was a technical problem, and the movie, if I read it right, the movie started, but with no audio, with no sound. And apparently it ran like that for like 10 minutes with everybody like complaining what the hell's going on. So apparently like 10 minutes passed, 15 minutes passed, 20 minutes passed. The theater's not fixing it. And it gets to the point that everybody's coming out of the theater, and there's a video up on Twitter. You can probably find it. Just search The Last Jedi AMC Burbank. Just search that and you'll find these stories. And a lot of these stories have a video in there that somebody took with their phone about like people in the foyer, like a bunch of people like screaming and yelling and swearing at staff. And it's like, restart the fucking movie. Like really getting upset. And I get it. I mean, look, you've been looking forward to this movie for 2 years. You maybe came early, you bought these tickets, you've been excited, you've been counting down the days to go, and you're there, and you sit through 20 minutes of trailers, and then the movie starts, and there's no sound, and ultimately they never got the movie going. So what AMC did was they offered them either passes to go see a later screening, or they could get passes to go see the movie in another theater, at somewhere else, at another location. And I mean, I felt bad for those people, but some of them did get really upset. And here they are sitting, screaming and yelling, first of all, at like a bunch of teenagers who work at these movie theaters, like screaming. And I saw in this one video, there's this one poor teenage kid who's been sent over to explain to people that they're not going to be able to restart the movie. And it's just this kid, it's not his fault, but he's there explaining to people, and people got really upset. And again, I can understand why people are upset. Very much. I totally get it. But apparently it got so tense that the management started to feel that people's safety was in danger. So they called the police, and the police come and show up, and it was just like, it's just chaos. It was just like some kind of big brouhaha, and we had just missed it, and we had just been there. Now, look, I get it. From a theater's point of view, I think the way these digital systems are set up is that they're unable to restart it. I think something happens or whatever. I'm not really clear on it. But, I mean, oh my goodness. When you're opening the biggest movie of the year, and you got to make sure you double, triple, quadruple check all your gear is working, that everything is running fine, and all you make sure it's working. Now, problems still happen. That happen. I mean, I get it. Sometimes things go wrong. It's uncontrollable. It just does. But I mean, I would want to ask the theater management over there, and I happen to know the manager of the theater at AMC Burbank 16, and he's a really good guy and a very good manager. But I would like to say, how did you not run like quadruple and quintuple checks on this stuff the opening night of the biggest movie of the year to make sure this doesn't happen, when you're going to have this place loaded with people and all that kind of stuff? Now, it points to another problem as well to me. Because, see, there's another major theater chain in Los Angeles called the ArcLight. And the ArcLight Hollywood is probably like the destination movie theater in Hollywood, right? And what the ArcLight Hollywood does is at the beginning of every movie, a staff person comes out, welcomes everybody, begs everybody, please put your phones away. Please do not use your phones. And they also say at the ArcLight Hollywood, I'm going to stay here in the theater for the first 10 minutes of show just to make sure everything's working properly, to make sure everything's meeting our high standards of the ArcLight Hollywood, and blah, blah, blah. And so they have a staff person physically come into the theater, stand there, and wait for the movie to start, and then stands there for the first 5 or 10 minutes to make sure everything's fine, then they leave. This might be something movie theaters like AMC, because apparently, again, this movie was running for like 10 minutes without sound before anybody on staff, like, did anything about it. So maybe there's something to be learned there from people, and just a big riotous situation there in Burbank that Ann and Ray and I just barely missed. And so I'm kind of glad we were out of there and not there at the time. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get started with the first official question of the day. First official question today comes to us from Bob Sackett. And Bob Sackett writes, there was talk of a live-action Jonny Quest movie with Robert Rodriguez set to direct. Any idea or word on this project? Thanks. Well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And you're right. For those of you who remember that last year, word came out that they were going to be developing a Jonny Quest movie. And if you want to go back to like the old animated fare, Jonny Quest is actually a character in an IP that is particularly well positioned to actually make what I think would be a pretty decent movie. Jonny Quest was not my favorite cartoon as a kid, don't get me wrong. But as far as what it is, when you look at the types of adventures he had and the types of characters those are and the setup, that's actually really well positioned to be a feature film today. So there's a lot of things you could do with that. And I remember I was very intrigued. It was also very interesting that they had attached Robert Rodriguez, who is, of course, directing that upcoming Alita Battle Angel movie that the trailer just dropped for. So he's doing that. And, of course, he did Sin City. He did Spy Kids, all that kind of stuff. So what happened to that movie? Where did it go? Okay, so I did some digging around. Here's what I know. So obviously Robert Rodriguez did leave the movie. He left to go and do Alita Battle Angel with James Cameron. Okay, so so there he goes. He's gone. He's no longer on the film. However, the film is still moving forward. What I have found out is that the film itself, Jonny Quest, has attached a new director. There is a new director attached. However, we don't know who that is yet, but it is done. They've attached a director, and apparently it is a named director. It's a director whose name, if we said the name, we would recognize his or her name. So I know that. We also know that they are finalizing bringing on a new writer to do not a page one rewrite, but to do a repass on the script, if you will, and we should be getting announcements in early 2018. But apparently everything with Jonny Quest is still moving forward. Robert Rodriguez is off the film. They do have another director attached, but they haven't announced the name of this new director yet. And they're just finalizing getting a new writer on to do kind of a cleanup of the script so they can start making some more announcements in early 2018. So from my understanding, the movie's still coming, it's still in progress, it's still moving forward, and we should be getting some official announcements at least in the next couple of months. That's everything I know about that. I'm, for one, kind of looking forward to seeing what they do with this property. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Jessica Ritter. And Jessica Ritter writes, I was just wondering if you had a chance to see the new poster for Ocean's 8. I think it looks and sounds wonderful. The cast is great, and I love these kinds of films. What do you think of the poster, and what are the odds that the film turns out well? Yeah, the first poster came out, and you know what? I love conceptual stuff. There's two things I really love in my posters, and they're two different types. One type of poster is the poster that captures the spirit and identity of the film in one frame. And I've talked about some posters that I love in the past, but posters that capture the identity of a film in just one frame. Those are posters that I love. The other types of posters that I love are the ones that really have a really cool concept to them. And I gotta say, I really like the concept of this poster. I'm sure this is not the final poster. This is not a poster that'll be hanging in my office, but it's a cool conceptual poster for a first poster that comes out. And of course, you got Sandra Bullock, you got Cate Blanchett, you got, I mean, there's a really solid cast lined up here. You got Catwoman in there. You got some stupid name, Awkwafina. I'm not going to pretend to know. Maybe Awkwafina is the most talented, wonderful person in the world. I don't know, but it's a stupid name. I don't know anything about them. So anyway, you got a whole bunch of these people there. And I think, look, the concept is really great, and the concept is really sound. I'm looking forward to it. Could it be a total, dumpster fire of a disaster? Absolutely it can be. It may end up being absolutely terrible. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be interesting. You got a very, very solid cast of very, very talented actresses in there. You got a lot of Academy Awards and Academy Award nominations in this lineup of talent. Let's see if it's any good. Now, there are some people, and I'll address this. There are some people who just cannot handle the idea of women being the lead in a movie. There's some people just lose their minds. It doesn't matter that 90% of the movies out there are led by men. No, they don't care about that. If you dare make a movie about women and have women in the lead, then that movie has an agenda. I mean, so it just, the weak-minded fools drive me crazy. Anyway, so there is some push, but it's funny because the only pushback I've seen to this movie so far is at least 99% has been just people who can't handle backwards thinking guys who cannot handle the concept of women leading a movie. That's the only real pushback I've seen. The other 1% has been a concern over, they think the whole Oceans storyline has run dry. And that's a totally fair criticism. Absolutely. If anything worried me about this movie, it's the fact that I didn't love, there was a diminishing return for me with the Oceans movie. And my fear with this one is that the downward trajectory of my enjoyment of the Oceans films will continue downward, because it's not like the Oceans films got better and better and better and better and better. That wasn't my experience. I really liked the first one. I didn't mind the other ones, but my enjoyment for them went down. The fear I have about this movie is the whole Oceans thing played out. Maybe, maybe not. We'll just have to wait and see when these things... And there's other legitimate concerns to have about this movie, just like there are legitimate concerns to have about any other movie. The only one that I reject as a non-legitimate concern is when I get some of these backward-thinking yahoos who go, oh, women are leading it. Well, then it's stupid. Well, okay, whatever. Keep going back and humping your shoe, I guess. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. And the next topic today comes to us from Karan K, who writes... Hey, John, love the show. Thank you so much, Karen. I wanted to know, what does Disney buying Fox mean for the Gambit, XForce, and the Orient Express sequel that were already greenlit by Fox? Okay, this is a great question, and it came up momentarily the other day as well, but I thought there's so many people writing in this one specific question, asking about Gambit and things like that, asking about that. What's the future for these things now with this whole new Disney and Fox arrangement? Because one of the things we've been talking about is like Deadpool 2, we've been talking about X-Men Phoenix, and we've been talking about New Mutants. And those things, all that kind of stuff. Now, these are different from the Gambit situation, or from the Orient Express situation, or whatever others, the Multiple Man with James Franco. Multiple Man with James Franco is another movie that recently got announced that they're kind of exploring and making some deals on. What happens to those? They're two different sets of circumstances. Because on your one hand, with your Deadpool 2, X-Men, and New Mutants, these are films that are already done shooting. Some of them might have some reshoots that they're going to be doing, but that's normal. But for the most part, principal photography on those films are done. Because of that, I have very little doubt that those movies are going to come out as planned, as expected, no problems. However, what do you do with films and projects like Multiple Man? What do you do with films and projects like Gambit? What do you do with things like Murder on the Orient Express sequel? What do you do with those? What happens to those? That's a bigger question that is completely up in the air. Those are things that could be changed easily. The movies that are already shot, I have no doubt that Disney's not really going to toy with those or affect those much at all. They're already shot. It would be a waste of money to not put them out as planned, whatever. To change them up too much at this point would be too much a hassle. They're done, they're shot, whatever. But, Gambit hasn't started shooting. it's made movement. They got their script. They got a director on board. They had a release date, all that kind of stuff. But it has not started shooting. Murder on the Orient Express has not started shooting. Now, films like Murder on the Orient Express are a separate issue as well from the Gambit one, because the Gambit one is tied into an overall cinematic universe per se. And it really all depends, what does Disney want to do with that X-Men cinematic universe? If they want to reboot it, then whatever. You know what? I'm going to say this. I have seen nothing to tell me yet. I have not seen anything that tells me that Disney is giving up on the Gambit movie or that Disney would scrap the Gambit project. I've not seen anything to suggest that yet. Okay, so let's just be clear about that. But the more and more I think about it, I have a feeling when you consider all the drama that went on behind the scenes with the Gambit movie and all that kind of stuff, if I had to bet $5, I wouldn't feel really positive about this, but I would put my $5 on Gambit not happening. And you know what? I'm one of those guys that I have no problem with a guy like Channing Tatum playing Gambit. I actually think he'd do a really damn good job. And remember, I used to hate Channing Tatum as an actor. I used to say he was the worst working actor in Hollywood, but that was like 8 years ago. To me, he has worked and worked and worked and improved and improved and improved and improved. And now I actually get really excited when he's in a movie because I usually find he delivers. He, especially the last number of years, he just delivers. And I thought he might do a pretty good job as a Gambit, but at this point, if I had to put $5 down on it, I would guess that this Gambit thing won't happen. I would also bet that this James Franco multiple man thing doesn't happen. Again, I don't feel real positive about that, so I wouldn't put $100 on that or anything like that. But if I had to bet $5, yeah, I bet these ones aren't happening. That's just my guess, and we'll see how Disney decides to proceed. Again, this whole Fox-Disney deal, we are getting a look at probably 1% of the details that are in that deal. 99% of the details in this deal are probably still not public knowledge yet, and we'll probably just have to wait and see how they play out as Disney and Fox start to reveal the details of the deal, which would include things like Hulu and Gotham and Gambit and multiple man. I mean, we're probably just going to have to see what Disney wants to do as we're moving forward. But yeah, if you're asking me what I think is going to happen with them, I think they're going to disappear. All right, thanks a lot for the question. Let's move on to the next one. And the next one comes to us from Joshua Nyberg, who writes, John, I absolutely love your content. Thank you so much, Joshua. With both Jumanji and The Greatest Showman opening in theaters next week, do you think they will have a better opening in terms of revenue? Also, do either of them stand a chance to lead the box office in revenue, or will that honor belong to The Last Jedi on its second weekend? Thanks. Well, Joshua, the first thing I should point out is that you're getting your weeks mixed up a little bit. Jumanji and The Greatest Showman actually will open in 2 weeks' time on Star Wars The Last Jedi's third weekend. Pitch Perfect 2 opens next weekend. And then The Greatest Showman and Jumanji. Now, which is actually kind of interesting because here's the thing. If Greatest Showman and Jumanji were opening next weekend on Star Wars The Last Jedi's second weekend, no doubt Star Wars The Last Jedi would throttle them. No doubt. Star Wars The Last Jedi would easily dominate the box office on its second weekend. However, what becomes a more interesting question is what's going to happen with Star Wars The Last Jedi on its third weekend with Greatest Showman and Jumanji opening up with The Rock and Hugh Jackman. I mean, what's going to happen in the third? If it was a second weekend question, to me, there's really not much of it. There's no question there. The Last Jedi would win the box office again, easy. No problem. However, third weekend, that's a horse of a different color. That is a totally different scenario. Which of those three films will win the box office on their third weekend? And I'm going to say Jumanji. I think Jumanji will win the Star Wars The Last Jedi's third weekend in the box office. Because remember, we can anticipate a 50% drop easily. You can anticipate a 50% drop and then another 50% drop on top of that for its third weekend. Can Jumanji beat Star Wars The Last Jedi after taking 2 consecutive minimum 50% drops? And I believe the answer to that is yes. Well, what about The Greatest Showman? I'm dying to see this movie, by the way. I've been listening to, you've heard me say this for the last couple of days. I've been listening to the soundtrack to this movie. I think it's fantastic, and I am dying to see this movie. However, this movie is not really designed to be a blockbuster per se. Jumanji, you know, it's got sentimentality value because there's some nostalgic value attached to the old movie with Robin Williams. You got the biggest movie star in the world right now, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson starring in it. The previews have been really good. The reviews are good. I mean, you got a lot of things going in its favor. So I have no doubt that Jumanji will beat Greatest Showman. Greatest Showman is probably going to be the best movie between it and Jumanji. But, you know, I've seen Jumanji. I haven't seen Greatest Showman yet. But I'm guessing that The Greatest Showman will be better than Jumanji. But yeah, I think Jumanji will win that weekend. I just don't see how Star Wars The Last Jedi on its third weekend against real competition. Because we've seen some blockbusters have no real competition in their second and third weekend. Jumanji and Greatest Showman are legit competition for it. And in its second week, look, Pitch Perfect 2. Pitch Perfect makes money. The Pitch Perfect franchise makes money. So it's not like The Last Jedi has no competition on the second weekend as well, but it'll have no problem with its second weekend. But that third one, I'm going to go with Jumanji, especially when you see that Star Wars The Last Jedi just shattered some records with its opening night box office, the Thursday night box office. I think it was around $45 million, but I'll talk about that thing in another video a little bit later. But anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Thanks a lot for asking. All right, we go on now to the final emailed in question of the day. And the final emailed in question of the day comes to us from David Browning. And David Browning writes, "Hi, John. Been a fan since AMC days, and love that you're a fellow supporter of Man of Steel." Well, thank you so much, David. Now, with Justice League, you say you're a fan, but I watched you rant about how Warner Brothers should reboot. I think this shows how little you actually believe in them. Why say you like something, but also want to change just because your friends don't like it? What? Who said that? Anyway, just because your friends don't like it. And why reboot after establishing a universe which has huge potential? All right. Thanks a lot for the question, David. And the reason I thought I would take this question is because, and David, I know you totally mean well. I absolutely know you mean well with your question. I get it. But here's why I want to address this. There's this toxic notion, and honestly, this is the core. I think we're talking about now the core of what leads to destructive and toxic fandom. And that is this. There's a set of two beliefs. Belief number one, if you like something, everybody else is stupid if they don't like it. That's the one thing that leads to a toxic fandom. But the second ingredient of toxic fandom, I believe, is kind of unintentionally, but really highlighted in your email, David. And that's this. If you like something, you cannot acknowledge that anything else is wrong with it. If you like something, you have to go, no, I see no problems. Everything is great. Everything's wonderful. Blah, blah, blah. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. That is a very big mentality in some of the darker corners of fandom today. There are simply people who are not mentally strong enough to like a film and at the same time go, oh yeah, but that thing about it was crappy. And this is a problem and this is a problem. See, pointing out problems doesn't mean, there's this belief out there that if you point out problems and if you acknowledge problems, that means you can't like it. That's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. And you know, I see this play out with DC fans, with Marvel fans, even with Star Wars fans. Because when I came out of Star Wars The Last Jedi, when I was at the premiere, and I came out of it, I was the first audience to see it. I tweeted out, I really liked The Last Jedi. I did not like Finn's storyline, and I did not like Benicio del Toro's character. But other than that, I pretty much loved everything else. Okay? So that's what I tweeted out. I said I loved everything else and that I really liked the movie. But I also pointed out there were a couple things that didn't work for me. The Finn storyline and the Benicio del Toro character. Okay, so I put that on my opening tweet. You would not believe the amount of messages I then got saying, John, you call yourself a Star Wars fan. If you're a fan, why are you sitting there talking crap about the movie? I'm not talking crap about the movie. I am simply pointing out there are a couple things that didn't work for me. They might work for you, and that's great. I just pointed out there's a couple things that do not work for me in this movie. One being Finn's story arc. I thought was a waste. I think John Boyega's great. I love the character Finn, but his story arc in this movie, they took a risk with it, but it didn't work for me, and it fell flat for me. And I thought Benicio del Toro's character was a waste. Benicio del Toro is a great actor, and I love him, but the character in this movie was a waste. But I love the movie. I love everything else about it, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed this movie a great deal, but these are problems. If you're a Star Wars fan, you have no idea how many times I hear this. If you're a Star Wars fan, you wouldn't nitpick at little things like that. It's like, well, no, it's just not, I'm not a mental midget like you that can't like something and acknowledge that it's not perfect and acknowledge that there are some problems with it. What a concept. And I get this all the time. Like, I get this all the time too. Like, I'm a huge fan of the DCEU. But the moment I brought up and let people know that Ben Affleck was leaving, people, you hate the DCU. You're a DC hater. No, I like it. I don't stick my head in the sand and blind myself to reality. And that is one of the ingredients of a toxic, vile fandom that turns people off the movies. Is one, if I like it, anybody else who doesn't like it is stupid. But the second one is, if you like something, you're not allowed to say anything negative about it. Those are the hallmarks of mentally weak people, right there. Those are the keynotes of mentally weak people. Because guess what? I really like The Last Jedi, but I have problems with it. And at the end of the day, I overall loved it. Guess what? I really like Justice League. I saw it 6 times in theaters. But that doesn't mean you stick your head in the sand, go, no, I don't see any of the problems, and acknowledge the realities. The realities are, you know, nobody went to go see it, relatively speaking. Should have been the number 2, number 3 biggest box office comic book movie of all time, ends up at like number 24. Doesn't even crack $100 million opening weekend. It is a referendum showing that the audience is not buying into the DCEU. Just because I like the films doesn't mean I become an idiot and blind myself to the factual numbers in front of me. Boom! Those are the reality numbers. And because I love the DC characters and I want them to succeed on a grand scale, yes, I believe the right thing to do is reboot. And it's cool if that's not your opinion. That's great. I have no problem. I'm not telling you should think the same way I think. But I think it is very sound and logical for me as a fan of DC to say, hey, I like the movies, but it's clear. The data in front of us does not lie. People do not believe in the DCEU. So much so that they didn't come out to watch the hallmark, the crown jewel of the DC cinematic universe, Justice League. They didn't come out to support it, which basically tells us that they have no belief in the DCEU. And if I'm a real fan, then I want what's best for the DCEU. I want what's best for a DC cinematic universe. I want what's best for the fans of a DC cinematic universe. And my belief right now is the best way to do all of that is to reboot because the audience has abandoned it. Now, you may think there's a better way to approach the problem. You may think there are other options to approach the problem, and that's great. I have no problem with that. But this whole mentality of, if you like something, you shouldn't say anything bad about it. Well, then that's an idiotic position. That is simply an idiotic position, held by some very smart people, but it is an idiotic position nonetheless. If you really like something, then you should be the most comfortable person in the world with talking about the problems with it because you're secure in your love for it. You know, I love Man of Steel. I don't care how many times people tell me, John, you're dumb for liking Man of Steel. That's fine. You can say that all day long. I'm not going to change that I love Man of Steel in my top 10 comic book films of all time. John, if you're a Star Wars fan, you shouldn't say those negative things about The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. Yes, I should. As a matter of fact, as a fan of the movie, I should be the first person to point out things that aren't quite working in the movie. As a fan, you should be the first person pointing out things that didn't work for you in the movie. That leads to healthy fandom. Because if somebody wants to debate with you, you know who I love debating with? I really enjoy debating with people who right off the top will acknowledge the weaknesses in their own position. When you're debating or talking with somebody who right off the bat will start with saying, hey, look, this is my position, and here are the weaknesses with my position. Boom, 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 boom. When somebody does that, it's like, this is a rational thinker, and I've got my hands full debating them because they think rationally, so I'm going to have a hard time here. But I love that. Those are the best people to have conversations with. So you say, John, you say you like the Justice League, but I don't think you really do because you're saying they should reboot. I'm going to say no. I'm proving I like the Justice League. I am proving I have a love for the DC Cinematic Universe because I want them to reboot. That is the proof that I care. and that I love these things, but I'm not so self-centered that just because I like it, I should ignore all the other problems and just keep going forward with what I like anyway. Nope. I like it, but I recognize, hey, a lot of people have been abandoning it. Oh well. Just because I like it shouldn't stop us doing what is necessary to make it healthier in the future. And again, I think that means reboot. You may think that means something else. That's great. We can have differences of opinions on that. That's fantastic. Let's just not try to tell people that they need to stick their heads. If you call yourself a DC fan, you better not say anything's wrong. That's toxic. Absolutely toxic thinking. And that's not going to help anything or anybody at the end of the day. Anyway, okay, guys, that will do it for, sorry I ranted on that for a bit, but look, the health of the film fan community is like one of the most important things in the world to me. A healthy, thriving film fan community means a healthy, thriving film community. And this type of stuff just is important to me. Maybe it shouldn't be, first world problems and all that, I get it, but it is important to me. So anyway, all right, guys, now we're going to move into the second part of the show, which is taking your live questions. Of course, a couple different ways to get live questions on the show. Number one, you can send in a super chat. And you know what? I'm looking at the chat board now, and I think there's probably enough super chats in there. So if you're watching right now, please don't send in any more super chats. And if I don't get through them all, I'll make another video for a little bit later. And then maybe if I get through them quickly, I'll take a couple of Twitter questions as well. We'll see how we're doing on time. Now, before we get to those questions, though, it is that time of the show for me to take my 1-minute commercial break to admittedly shamelessly plug my Patreon campaign, the one thing that keeps the lights on around here. So we will be back in 1 minute. Check this out. For those of you who have followed me for any period of time, you guys know that I made the decision recently to leave the corporate overlords. I no longer wanted to work for corporations. I wanted to be an independent content creator. And the only way I've been able to do that is by the support of my Patreon supporters. So what I would like to do is to ask you guys who watch my shows, who spend any amount of time with me every single month, to consider going over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. There you'll get all the information about what exactly does it mean to be a Patreon supporter of mine? What does being a Patreon supporter do for helping to make sure that shows like this one and all the other shows I do here on my channel can actually be produced? And on top of that, what benefits are there to being a Patreon supporter? And maybe if you guys can check that out, if you decide you want to be one of my Patreon supporters, that would be awesome. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just happy that you guys have decided to be here today and be a fellow movie fan and join us in the conversation. So go and check out the website, see if you want to become a Patreon supporter. And now let's get back. All right, guys, and a special thank you to all of you who are already my Patreon supporters. You guys are the reason this show is even able to exist in the first place. Thank you so much. And guys, again, if you like my content, check out that Patreon page and see if being a Patreon supporter is for you. Audio-only podcasts of the shows, Facebook exclusive group where we do an after show after the show is done, which is a lot of fun. A few other benefits as well. Check that out, see if it's for you. If it is, awesome. Become one of the supporters of the show. And if not, that is totally fine. I'm just glad you're here being a fan with us. Okay, with that out of the way, let's jump over to the live questions that have been coming in. And we're going to start with this one. Spencer Clark writes, expectations/predictions for the final season of Game of Thrones. Also, what have been some of your highlights of the show for you? Fan from Kitchener, Ontario. My sister actually lived in Kitchener, Ontario for a little while. As far as some of the highlights of the series, that's something I would have to sit down and think about. There's something I can just come off. I mean, Red Wedding is obviously a big thing. There are a few other things. The last couple of seasons have been really great. My big prediction is still that Jon ends up on the throne. And I've been saying that for a while. I think Jon ends up on the throne. And I don't know. I mean, okay, I don't even want to say that because that might be a spoiler. Because I knew a little something about this upcoming season, but I'm not 100% if it's true or not. But just in case it's true, I'm not going to say just in case it's a spoiler. But my big final prediction for Game of Thrones final season, I have loved the last couple seasons. You know what? I have not been the world's biggest Game of Thrones fan. I like Game of Thrones. Like the first 3-4 seasons, I like Game of Thrones. But I've never been like a hardcore Game of Thrones fan. I thought the last couple seasons have been spectacular. And I've really been getting on board with it. Now I'm super excited about the new season as well. So that's the big prediction for me. Jon ends up on the throne. All right. Next one comes to us from Manuel Fernandez, who writes, Wouldn't Disney, with their consolidated power, control 40% of the market share? Wouldn't Disney films take up most of the box office and thus affect the box office of other films from other studios, making those movies less money? No, absolutely not. That's a misconception. Let's put it this way. So, Manuel, let's say you, me, and person 3, 4, and 5, okay? You, me, and person 3, 4, and 5. We all have movie studios. You have 20% of the box office. I have 20% you have 20% market share. I have 20% market share. And everybody, all 5 of us have 20% market share. Okay, now you and I merge, and now I have 40. But that doesn't change that person 3 still has 20. That doesn't change that person 4 still has 20. And that doesn't change that person 5 still has 20. Even if you combine us together, we have 40. We're bigger than everybody else. Yes, but that doesn't affect their market share. Their market share is still there. So, no, I don't see that affecting anybody else. Like, my movie making money in January has no impact on whether that person's movie makes money in February if it's a good movie. And if people are going to go out to see it. So, no, I don't think it affects anybody else at all, to be really honest with you. Not on a box office level. I don't see that impacting anything at all. Because just because you and I combine what we have, that doesn't suddenly take away from what those other guys have. So, anyway, that's just my point of view on that. All right, Sam Fisher writes, I read an article the other day that Fox was one of the big 6 studios. Who are the other 5? Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, and Lionsgate? Well, you got to add in Sony on top of there. Sony Pictures and Sony Pictures Classics is one of the big ones as well. So now you're looking at Fox, Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, Lionsgate. And yeah, I would actually put Sony above Lionsgate. Lionsgate has been getting bigger and bigger, but I would think I would deem the big studios, now that Fox is gone, the major studios are Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, and Sony. And then you have a next tier level down where you got your Lionsgate, your A24s, your Annapurna Pictures. You got the STX is growing as well. Blumhouse is becoming a major player as well. So there's still lots and lots of competition out there. But I would say those are the 5. I would put Sony in that list right now. All right, thanks a lot for the question, Sam. Next one comes to us from Jazanthan Sassathan, who writes, correct me if I'm wrong, but The Amazing Spider-Man will make more money than Justice League, and people consider The Amazing Spider-Man 2 a bomb. That's a good question. Amazing Spider-Man. Let me look up the box office here for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which you're right, most people consider that a bomb. And The Amazing Spider-Man 2, yeah, made $708 million. $708 million, and people lined up to call that movie a bomb. That's $708 million. Justice League, I don't even know if it's going to hit 650. So if we're going to call Spider-Man a single character movie a bomb at $708 million, what do we call Justice League, the ultimate team-up movie of the DC Cinematic Universe? What do we call that? Well, it's a bloody disappointment. Look, I argued that we should not call The Amazing Spider-Man 2 a bomb. I don't think it is. It made $708 million. It's not a bomb. I would also say that, I don't think Justice League is a bomb, but it is also a huge understatement to just call it a disappointment. So, I mean, Justice League is easily a monumental disappointment and a monumental lost opportunity as far as a Justice League movie goes. But I'm going to defend it a little bit here because, yeah, if we call The Amazing Spider-Man 2 a bomb, we absolutely have to call Justice League a major bomb, but I don't think we should call The Amazing Spider-Man 2 a bomb. I've never thought we should call it a bomb. Was it a step down? Yes. Was it a disappointment? Yes. But I think we can just use those same terminologies for Justice League. Enough so that they should reboot it? Absolutely. That's just my opinion. Maybe you think differently, and that's totally cool. All right, next question comes to us from Curtis Lopez, who writes, did you see that the audience score on The Last Jedi is at 59%? Look, I don't know how many times I got to say this, but I will say it again. No real audience score has come out yet. There's only one real audience score, and that is Cinema Score. Because all these, like IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, people can vote whether or not they've seen the movie, and people can vote multiple times. And we have seen people online try to organize campaigns to upvote or downvote movies. That's why I always say the Rotten Tomatoes audience rating, while it's an interesting number, ultimately it doesn't mean anything because there's no way to verify anybody who's voted on it even saw the movie. Like we talked about this with Justice League too, because Justice League's got an 80%. Yeah, but it had like over 60,000 votes registered before the movie even had its first public screening. What does that tell you? The same thing is true here. That's why I always say the Rotten Tomatoes audience score is an interesting thing to look at. Sure, it's interesting, but it means nothing. The cinema score is the only thing that counts, because the cinema score is actually people taking surveys at the theaters as people are coming out of the movie theaters. They can only vote once, and they can verify 100% that each of these people actually saw the movie. That's why it's the only score that counts. Now, if the cinema score for The Last Jedi comes out and it's something crappy like a B, because for cinema score, B, but that's good on a report card, that's not the measure on cinema score. So if The Last Jedi comes out and gets something crappy like a B, hey, then we know that, yeah, even though people like me and a bunch of other people like me really like the movie, then we'll know that, hey, a lot of the audience didn't. If the cinema score ends up being something crappy like a B, then we'll know that there's a lot of the audience that did it. However, if it comes out with like an A-, an A, something in that neighborhood, then we'll know that, once again, these non-certified, anybody can vote on them whether they've seen the movie or not, and people can find ways to vote multiple times, that those rating systems mean absolutely nothing. They mean nothing. So again, let's wait and see the actual cinema score, which is the only real authentic audience gauge measuring metric. That's the only one, is cinema score. So let's see how it comes out. Again, I have no idea how it comes out. It might be something crappy like a B or a B-, or maybe even less than what it should be. Maybe it's a B+. That would be lower than it should be. But if it's that, then we will know that there's going to be some division amongst the audience. If it's something like an A-, A+, then we'll know that it's again, that these other metric systems are not worth what the digital print paper they're printed on. You know what I'm saying? So let's just wait and see how that all turns out. We should find out in the next 24 hours or so, and then we'll know for certain. All right, next one comes to us from Manuel Fernandez again, who writes, are the conflicts between the theaters and The Last Jedi, along with the incident with the LA Times, hints that Disney's possible abuse of power? No. Again, with the whole Last Jedi thing with movie theaters, seriously, guys, if you think Disney was playing hardball with movie theaters with their Last Jedi and Star Wars movie, that's nothing to compare to the way Lucasfilm has dealt with theaters and the Star Wars films going back ever since The Phantom Menace. It's nothing. This has been standard procedure. And remember, that's long before Disney ever owned Lucasfilm. Also, the whole thing with the LA Times thing, I understood where they were coming from. Disney felt like they were being unfairly abused by a particular outlet, and they struck back. Did they strike back the right way? Absolutely not. They did not. But I kind of understood where they were coming from in that. So as far as how Disney is dealing with theaters with the Star Wars movie, that is nothing compared to the way Lucasfilm used to deal with theaters. And with the LA Times thing, I think that was something that got blown out of proportion and got quickly fixed. So, you know, the LA Times and Lucasfilm sat down, or LA Times and Disney sat down, they worked out an agreement, they got it fixed. So to me, it's not really a big deal. I still don't want Disney making my X-Men movies, but hey, whatever. Bricks TM writes, today marks the day Christopher Hitchens died. Do you think a biopic would be interesting to watch? He was fascinating, and his memoir, Hitch 22, was stellar. He's worth a search on YouTube. Look, I'm not going to pretend to know something that I don't. I don't know who Christopher Hitchens is. Off the top of my head. Maybe if you were sitting with me and say, oh, he's the guy who this, and I would go, oh, yeah, right. But off the top of my head, I do not know who he is. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend. Actually, I'm not the only one. I got people in the chat board going, who? Yeah, so if any of you guys in the chat board know who I'm talking, we have other people saying, who? Who? So other people in the chat board are not quite knowing who it is we're talking about. So, yeah, I'll look them up after the show is done. After the show is done, I'll look them up. Okay, let's move on to the next question. The next question comes to us from Andy A. Hernandez writes, a live Super Chat live stream. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, because the Super Chat live stream is live. So I'm not quite sure what you're saying, Andy, but thank you for submitting one anyway. Curtis Lopez just put in a Super Chat. Thank you so much, Curtis. Anthony R. John, I saw Talk last night, and oh my god, one word, it was weird. I'm going to go see it again in 1 hour. Do you think JJ can bring the trilogy home? Talk. I'm not sure what talk is, to be honest. I'm getting caught with my pants down today. I don't know what talk is. What do you mean by talk? I'm not really sure. So can JJ bring the trilogy home? I'm not quite sure what trilogy we're talking about. Do you guys know in the chat board what it is he's talking about? So, okay. Last Jedi? He probably meant The Last Jedi. Oh, okay. Can JJ bring the trilogy home? I think so, but that's a topic for another video another time. Chris KG125 says, John, Rian Johnson crushed it with episode 8. I loved it. Also, Hugh Flipping Rock, thank you so much. I enjoyed it quite a bit myself. Again, I had some issues with it, but overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it's my favorite Star Wars film other than the original trilogy. I said that right from the beginning. I don't think it cracks the original trilogy, but I do think it might be my favorite other than the original trilogy. Mickey Busha87 writes, greetings from Ireland. Have you heard that Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 is making movies to prepare us all for UFO disclosure? What madness is this? I have not heard about that. I don't know if I'll take serious life philosophies from rock stars. At least not most of them, but I have not heard that, but now you've made me completely intrigued, Mickey, and now I'm going to have to look this up and find out for myself what this madness is all about. Thanks a lot for the question. All right, Freddie K83 writes, screw you, I love the Ewoks. Does that include Caravan of Hope and Battle for Endor? So, for those of you who don't know what Freddie's talking about, I have a video up on YouTube that I put up years ago called Screw You, I Love the Ewoks, basically explaining why Ewoks are awesome and completely misunderstood. And these are vicious little, like, flesh-eating monster warriors who will sever your head and use your severed heads as triumph in their victory dances and then eat your flesh. They will cook you alive over an open flame, hear your screams in the forest night, and then once you have died of screaming, they will peel the flesh from your body and eat you. These are the Ewoks, and I love the Ewoks. But does that include the TV movies, Caravan of Hope and Battle for Endor? Nope, not at all. I hated those things. Even as a kid, I hated those things. Doesn't matter that Wilford Brimley was in them. They were pretty bad, man. They were pretty bad. If you haven't seen Caravan of Hope or the Battle for Endor, you should look them up. You might be able to find them. And so at least they're a fun little part of Star Wars history for you. All right. Anthony R is writing, I meant The Last Jedi, damn autocorrect. Here's the $2. Yes, thankfully, some people in the chat board understood what you were trying to say, Anthony. Thanks a lot for that. KW Garrett 83 writes, so, in light of recent events, I can still watch The Usual Suspects or any movie starring a harasser. Or does that make me a bad person? No, look, on some level, we need to be able to separate the art from the artist. Is The Usual Suspects a great movie? Yes. And to me, it is one of the 10 best movies ever made. That's just my opinion. I am sure every movie that I watch, somebody who is associated with making that movie is a total asshole. No doubt about it. That's just the law of averages. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of people use their creative efforts to make a movie, and the odds are that a hell of a lot of them are total dickweeds. I mean, that's just the odds. If one of them happens to be the director, okay. If one of them happens to be one of the actors, okay. If one of them happens to be the costume designer, okay. If one of them happens to be the screenwriter, okay. If one of them happens to be the cinematographer, okay. But it's going to happen. Somebody, whether you know about it or not, somebody on your favorite movie is a dick of the highest order. That's just the law of averages. So, and remember, the movie is not Kevin Spacey's movie. He's just one of hundreds and hundreds of people who contributed to making it. If we're going to reject and throw away every movie that somebody happens to be in, then we're never going to watch any movie ever again, because somebody who contributed to that movie is a total dick. It's just the law of averages. Now, how does that affect us with current movies? That's different, because I can understand somebody feeling like let's say Kevin Spacey was still in All the Money in the World. I don't blame anybody who would then go, I feel uncomfortable going to support a movie that Kevin Spacey is in right now. I get it. I'm not going to judge you for that. That's totally understandable. I totally get it. But I don't think you need to do revisionist history in your own head about a movie that you think is great just because you found out somebody who was in it happened to be a giant dick. Because, again, every movie has dozens of giant dicks who are contributing to that movie. So, I mean, look, there's no right or wrong way to look at this. All it is about you and how you choose to approach it. That's ultimately the only thing that matters here. Does knowing that Kevin Spacey is a total jerk, does that affect you and your enjoyment of the past movies he's been in that you've enjoyed? Only you can answer that question. And there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer. So if you still like those films and you enjoy watching them, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. So that's kind of the way I see it. All right. Manuel Fernandez writes, do you think Netflix, HBO, and Amazon have any chance of competing with Disney's streaming service? I can't help but feel they'll trail behind. Hey, make no mistake about it. Netflix is the monster in the room. It's not Disney. Netflix is the monster in the room. Netflix is the Goliath here. I know it feels really weird to think of anything other than Disney being the Goliath. Netflix is the Goliath in the room. They have the upper hand, and they have earned that upper hand. Netflix has managed and navigated their business so brilliantly that they are in a place now that it's them and then there's everybody else. It's Netflix and then there's Hulu, Google, Amazon Prime, blah, 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 Crackle, whoever else you want to mention. It's Netflix and then it's everybody else. And Bob Iger knows that they have an uphill battle against Netflix. Why do you think they come out and say, we're going to price our service way less than Netflix? Because they know they have an uphill battle to climb. If Disney thought for a second that their streaming service could come out of the gate and be toe-to-toe competitive with Netflix, they wouldn't say, we're going to make our cost per month like half or whatever. They wouldn't do that. They know they have an uphill battle against Netflix. Netflix has just conducted and managed themselves great. And that's why they're in the position that they're in. Make no mistake, if this was a heavyweight prize fight, I would put $5 on Netflix over Disney. I really would. Disney has a shot. Disney has a legitimate shot. But that's why Disney had to make a move like this for Fox, is just to hopefully be competitive with Netflix. They made this deal so hopefully they can get in there and at least be competitive with them. So I think Bob Iger knows they have an uphill battle. I think Netflix knows that Disney has an uphill battle. Believe you me, if this was a heavyweight prize fight, if there was Vegas odds, the odds right now are on Netflix. It is, because they are just really smart and they've conducted their business really well. And they are a powerhouse. Powerhouse. So let's see how that all unfolds. Okay, next question comes to us from Pixar Fanfiction writes, are there any Broadway shows that you want to see turned into a film? Personally, I would love to see a 2D animated version of the Book of Mormon. Oh, that would be really interesting. I mean, to me, I know this is just a popular thing to say right now. For me, it's Hamilton. I mean, I love Hamilton. I went to go see the live show, I guess, a couple of months ago now, and it so exceeded even the already astronomical expectations. Like, I was floored by that show. Just loved it. I'm dying to see a film version of that. So that's the one to me that if I could pick one, it would be that one. Julio Cardenas writes, you are awesome. Cheers from Tijuana. Thank you so much, Julio. I really appreciate that. Sneep Weep writes, Sup, I've been reading online that many people were displeased with The Last Jedi. I loved how it deconstructed the series and the writing was top tier. Your thoughts? Well, I've already put up my review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. I have a couple of key problems with the film, but overall, I just loved the hell out of it. Again, I was in a regular audience last night that when the credits started, the entire place erupted into a standing ovation. So again, we're just gonna have to wait and see how the cinema score turns out. I mean, maybe it turns out bad, maybe it turns out great. We're just gonna have to wait and see. But for me, I think it's a worthy installment of the Star Wars saga. I do not think it approaches the original trilogy, but I think I probably like it more than The Force Awakens and Rogue One, both of which I liked very much. So that's my personal opinion on that. Ben Rayner writes, hey, John, yeah, I went to the movie last night at Century City, and movie started, and the lights stayed on for a few minutes longer. It lasted halfway through the opening crawl. Bad movie for it to happen to. Yeah, and you know what? I often feel bad for movie theaters when stuff like that happens, Ben, because, you know, look, there's 1,000 moving parts to getting a movie on the screen and playing in a theater, and every once in a while, something will go wrong. Now, fortunately for you, it was just that the lights stayed on halfway through the opening crawl. There were some people who got no audio, and then their screening was canceled. That's horrible. That's really, really horrible. But yeah, every once in a while, we're going to have bad experiences like that. It happens. Hey, look, you know where it happens more often? At home. More often at home. Why won't this channel load up? Why won't my audio to my TV turn on? Why won't the power button work on my TV? I have more problems at home than I have in movie theaters, so I'm not going to hold it against the movie theaters too much. Thanks a lot for the input, man. All right, Anthony911 writes, can we expect Disney to charge more for their streaming services? My concern is their pricing model. Yearly increases? Oh yeah, I think we can expect that Disney's going to start really, really low. And then over the progressive years, they'll get more expensive, depending on how successful they are. If they come out of the gate and they have like half as much success as Netflix, they'll keep it there until they gain more ground. Once they gain more ground, maybe then we'll see them start to boost their prices up. But absolutely, I totally expect that year 4 of the Disney streaming service will have a different price than year 1 of the Disney streaming service. I totally believe that. Hopefully they won't overprice it, but we'll see where they go. All right, thanks a lot, Anthony. James Smith writes, I was wondering with the fan reaction to The Last Jedi being negative, at least from mostly I have heard. What's your opinion on that? And if it will hurt Star Wars 9 as far as audience going to see it? Well, I'm going to disagree with you, James. The overwhelming amount of feedback I'm getting on my Twitter stream is positive, but there's certainly negative in there as well. I'm seeing negative reaction as well. But by far the majority for me has been, that I've seen, has been positive. Again, we'll have to see how the cinema score turns out. What kind of effect will it have on Star Wars Episode 9? Not really sure, because right now, I think the jury is out on as far as what does the general movie-going audience really feel about this movie? What do they think about this movie? We're going to have to really wait and see how this really kind of flattens itself out, because everybody's just hearing from their own circles, whether their own circles are saying it's the best movie ever, or whether their own circles are saying this is the worst thing ever. Let's just see how it kind of shakes out. I know I like it very much. I know a lot of people I know like it very much. I know the theater I was in loved the damn thing, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the same reaction for every movie theater. Doesn't mean it's going to be the same reaction for everybody. But right now we just don't know. So it's kind of impossible to speculate at this point until we get some more concrete information. All right, thanks for the question, man. Next one comes to us from Eric Say, who writes, chances of a show in the Alien universe or Predator on the Disney streaming service, I think very thin. I think very, very thin to none options of that, because I just don't think these franchises are as successful or as thriving as they once were a long time ago. Let's just wait and see. I mean, look, we just had an Aliens movie come out and it disappointed. It didn't bomb, but it did not do what they were hoping it was going to do at all. So we're going to have to wait and see how. So would Disney want to step up and invest big bucks into those and make a show out of that? I'm doubting it. Certainly not impossible. Not impossible. Could happen. But if I had to put $5 on it, I'm going to guess that wouldn't happen. Thanks a lot for the question, Eric. Next one comes to us from Clutch3000, who writes, my Age of Ultron showing had no sound either. Manager gave everyone a refund, a free ticket to the next show, plus a free ticket for any future movies. See, I love it when movie theaters do stuff like that. When, hey, you know what? Problems happen. I understand that. The question is, will you go above and beyond to make it up to me for that happening? Because, you know, just a refund, that's great. That's fine. You're giving me back the $10 I paid to come see this movie. That's great. But I also had this booked on my calendar. I turned down doing other things. I spent half an hour coming to the theater. I've been in this theater for a half hour. I got to spend another half hour going home. There's all of that stuff that just refunding my $10 doesn't make up for. So that's why I really appreciate it. And by the way, this movie theater, AMC Burbank 16, I've seen them do this too, where they give you a refund of your ticket and they give you another extra movie pass for free. I love it when places, because you know what? We as consumers have to understand that problems will happen. What is the earmark of a really good company is when they will go above and beyond to address that something bad happened and make it better for you as a consumer. So I'm really glad, Clutch, that you had that experience. That's a really good thing. All right. Sam Fisher writes, any word on Indiana Jones 5, over, under, on John Williams coming back to compose? Well, I was at a John Williams concert 2 years ago when John Williams talked about Indiana Jones 5, and apparently they had already talked to him about composing for it. So I think John Williams is going to be retiring really, really soon, but I do believe as long as Indiana Jones 5 actually happens, and I don't think it's a guarantee the movie actually happens, but if it does, I feel pretty good that John Williams will do the score for it. Because like I said, I've heard him talking about it already. So I got a feeling that'll happen. Let's see. Anthony911 writes, are they making X-Men and Fantastic Four toys? No idea. On that level, I have no idea. That's just something, again, we're going to have to wait and see how this all pans out and what Disney wants to do with these properties. And then we'll get some answers in the coming months. Eddie Matthews writes, with Disney / Marvel acquiring Fox's assets, what does this mean for new X-Men toys? What was that deal with? Possibly 90s X-Men animated series on Disney streaming service. Big fan since the AMC days. Again, Eddie, like we mentioned before, I mean, these are really good questions. That's a great question. And I'm sure the answer lies in those thousands of pages of this contract between Fox and Disney and what Disney wants to do. And then beyond that, what does Disney want to do with them? As far as the toys go, I think you're going to see, yes, I think they'll get back all the toy rights. I think they'll be able to do all those toys. Again, I haven't read the contract, so I don't know that for sure. But I would assume that they get the toy rights back and they can start developing those toys if they so choose. As far as the original X-Men series ending back up on the network, I don't know who currently has the distribution rights to that animated series or exhibition rights to that animated series. I don't know. I don't know if it was with Fox or I don't know if somebody else had it. So until we know the answer to that question, we can't really address it. If Fox did have the exhibition rights to that original show, then theoretically they should go back to Disney and Disney should be able to put it on their streaming service if they so choose. Great question, Eddie. All right, the next one comes to us from James Smith. And James Smith writes, John, with the repeal of net neutrality, how will this affect someone wanting to get into becoming a blogger or a vlogger? And also, even all shows like yours or any on YouTube or anywhere online, it sucks. Well, look, the net neutrality thing is fraught. The fact that they've struck down net neutrality, and don't worry guys, this won't be forever. The moment we get a new government administration in, they will fix this. And by the way, last I saw last night, there were already like 20 states getting ready to sue the FTC or the FCC over this to keep net neutrality in place. This battle is not yet over. This battle is not yet over. And even if these enemies of a free and open internet, even if the enemies of a free and open internet win right now, they're just going to be done away with in the next administration. So how will it affect YouTube? That's up to each individual billion-dollar internet provider. Each individual internet provider, now, you may not realize, internet business or internet service providers now, they have the right, with net neutrality rules gone, they have the right to go to YouTube and say, hey, YouTube, give us $500 million a year, or else we're going to throttle down. Sorry, guys, I forgot to power down that one camera. Give us $500 million a year, or else we're going to throttle the speed on our customers' access to YouTube. Give us $500 million, or else. They have the right to do that now. Under net neutrality, they never had that right. Under net neutrality, your internet service provider, if they want, they can say to you, hey, we see you like to use YouTube a lot. You're going to have to pay us an extra $3 a month to have access to YouTube. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but these companies are now free to do that if they so choose. It's like your cable package, right? You can get package number 1 for 19 bucks that includes ABC, NBC, this, or you can pay for package number 2 that gets you ESPN and Fox Sports 1, or you can pay for cable package number 3 that'll get you HBO, Home and Garden, and the Food Network, right? The internet service providers can do that for your internet. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, but they now have the power to do that if they want. They can say, oh, hey, a basic internet is $15 a month. You want access to YouTube and Vimeo? That's another $7 a month. You want access to Facebook? You want our social media package? You want access to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook? That's another $8 a month. You want access to news? You want our news package that gets you access to, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, CBS News, whatever. You want that? That's another $5 a month. They can do that. They have the ability to do that now. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, but they have fought very hard and paid hundreds of millions of dollars to their government officials that they've been lobbying to make sure they get the power to do that. They keep saying, oh, no, we won't do anything like that. Then why have you been spending hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure you get the right to do it? So we as internet people have to keep our eyes on this. I don't think we're going to see any immediate repercussions, again, because there's going to be court challenges to this, and it would take a while for anything to really happen. But again, I feel good that this will all get thrown out once a new administration comes into play. Okay, guys, with that, I have run out of time here today. For those of you who still had questions sitting there waiting, I will do a second video. I will do a companion video to today's show that will answer all of the rest of the questions that are sitting there waiting to be answered. I will get to those and I will put that video up just a little bit later this afternoon. Speaking of a little bit later this afternoon, don't forget, guys, it's Friday, which means it's time for the Weekly Hero. The Weekly Hero will be up at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time this afternoon. We're going to go live talking about all the happenings in the world of comic book movies. And gosh, I wonder if there's been any happenings in the world of comic book movies this week. And some of the happenings in the world of comic book TV shows as well. So make sure you come back at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to join us for Weekly Hero. And once again, for those of you who sent in those super chat questions that didn't get on the show, I will do a second video later today to get to those just like I did yesterday. All right, guys, that will do it for me. Listen, we have over 100,000 subscribers on this channel now, but there's always room for more. Click that subscribe button and join us and become one of our subscribers as well. If you like this video, click the thumbs up button, leave a thought or comment in the section below. Remember, we're all film fans together, so let's debate and disagree, but do so understanding that we're all on the same team. We are film fans together, even if we have differences of opinion. I would actually say because we have differences of opinion. That's the best thing about being a film fan. So join us there for that. And guys, hey, make sure you follow me on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, simply at John Campea. You can see that right there. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for now. My name is John Campea, and until the next show, bye-bye.